This year, natural resource districts across Nebraska are celebrating 50 years. The North Platte Natural Resource District is one of 23 NRDs and is centrally located in the Panhandle of Nebraska. The North Platte NRD is comprised of Banner, Garden, Morrill, Scotts Bluff, and southern Sioux counties and the North Platte Valley. The largest source of irrigation water is the North Platte River, a system of dams and canals in the river valley. Operated by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation since the early 1900s, diverts water from the river and stores it to irrigate about 300,000 acres. Some groundwater is also used to irrigate. The district consists of more than 3 million acres with a population of more than 45,000 people in 18 communities. Land use consists of range, crop, and pasture, and lakes and wetlands, forests, and other uses. Major agricultural products are cattle, corn, sugar beets, dry edible beans, alfalfa, and wheat. Most crops require irrigation because the annual average precipitation is 14 to 17 inches. The NRD system is unique to Nebraska, and keeping conservation top of mind has helped to protect our natural resources for generations to come.
The NRD system in the state of Nebraska is unique. I don't believe there's another system in the country that resembles it. I think it's a very good process. The control of natural resources remains in the hands of the local folks. They make the decisions.
I think they're hugely successful and the right thing to do, and I couldn't imagine trying to do some of the things we do with natural resources otherwise.
Conservation has a long and rich history in Nebraska and has been a common practice for hundreds of years. Starting in the 1800s, pioneers followed the river and moved west. Land agents started selling land because they knew of the groundwater underneath central Nebraska and used that knowledge to sell the land. As families started to settle along the North Platte River, the first irrigation district and infrastructure were created in the 1900s. Construction on the Pathfinder Dam and Interstate Canal was started in 1905 and completed in 1915. In 1925, all of the canal construction was done around 2,000 miles. Through the years, the Natural Resource District has worked hard to keep farmers' and ranchers' needs at the forefront, and this still holds true today. The North Platte NRD has had many accomplishments over the years, from working with government officials, planting millions of trees, building a greenhouse, and so much more.
Under the greenhouse was done under donations, generous donations from the community. And the things that we wanted the greenhouse to do, we wanted to show it as a business model, that there were alternate cropping methods in western Nebraska that could be used. Also, we wanted to show about conservation. You can conserve water using the greenhouse. It doesn't take a lot of water to raise those crops because of the humidity in there. And because we were going to be raising food, we wanted to give back to the community a little bit. All of the food from the greenhouse was donated to local the veterans home and to local food pantries. So those were the things we looked at when we started the greenhouse.
Shortly after I came to the NRD, they started certifying acres for flow meters, certifying groundwater acres. Yeah. And at one time, Pumpkin Creek wasn't running, and today we were out across it today, and it is.
In my time here at the NRD, I think we were just shy of the 5 million tree mark when I first came on, so we've since surpassed that. Chasing almost 6 million now.
Just out the Gearing Valley Flood Control Project, we finished the last part of that, called the Anson Drain. There were some design issues with that we are still addressing today. Like I said, we've had clean water for Harrisburg, and that was a big accomplishment.
The accomplishments over the last 50 years that the North Platte NRD has had is what makes this district so successful. Before being created in 1972, the NRDs had a trying time to get past a lawsuit that challenged the constitutionality of the NRDs. The district court judge rejected the injunction that would have prevented the districts to opening their doors. Finally, in July of 1972, the first Natural Resources District was created. The North Platte NRD named Ron Sosek the manager of the district in 1973, and he continued to be in that role for 40 years. In 1975, the Groundwater Management Act was put in place, which allowed Nebraska NRDs the authority over groundwater. The North Platte NRD began working on a variety of projects right away and started the South Gearing Drain project, as well as studying the groundwater declines in the Pumpkin Creek area. This work was started by a small staff, and by the 1980s, there was a need to expand.
I think it was Ron, a part-time secretary and a part-time tree planter to begin with, right? And really the concern was some cost share, pivots were going up. They were really big in the 70s or late 70s, 80s, and then of course again in the late 90s. But it's kind of seen the evolution of, okay, now we have a soil scientist because we see this concern. Now we've got water specialists because we see this concern. And really seeing that evolve into really dedicated staff on them.
In the 1980s, more projects were created and more challenges were seen in the North Platte Valley. The Lover's Leap project, which was created for flood control near Harrisburg, and the Untitled Drain project was approved by the board. In 1984, the North Platte NRD board started laying the groundwork for developing a state-mandated groundwater management plan. Trees continued to be sold and planted, and by 1988, 100,000 trees had been planted. Flood control and soil erosion continued to be in the forefront of challenges the NRD faced.
There were a lot of things that took place that the NRDs were a part of: terracing, flood control dams, soil erosion. All of those things aren't necessarily in the past, but are things that the NRD has worked on.
One of the major issues that was faced in the 1990s was water quality in Garden County. This led to receiving grants to help educate producers as they applied nitrogen to their farms, as well as implementing new rules and regulations that would help mitigate the rising levels of nitrates in groundwater. In 1996, it was the first time Nebraska law recognized the connection between surface and groundwater, which is the foundation for water management in the North Platte Natural Resource District. In 1997, the Harrisburg water system was constructed due to efforts of the NRD. The North Platte NRD then became the water operator for the system that serves the residents of that community and continues to operate and manage the system today.
I was hired specifically with funding under Section 319 of the Clean Water Act to address, to do information and education related to nitrate contamination, non-point source pollution of groundwater here. And initially that was my focus. So I was involved in helping bring the nitrate contamination, especially in the Lisco, Oshkosh, Llewellyn area, to the public's attention, to educate them a little bit about the causes of that nitrate, what could be done about it. Early on in the 1990s, after I was there, I think the NRD board decided to establish a groundwater management sub-area in the Lisco, Oshkosh, Llewellyn area. And so that brought about largely education and reporting requirements in an effort to reduce the nitrate in the groundwater.
The 2000s was a big decade for water quantity in the district. A well drilling moratorium was placed in Pumpkin Creek in 2001, and the rest of the district followed in 2002. Allocations on groundwater pumping were put into place in Pumpkin Creek in 2003, and the rest of the district followed in 2009. Legislation was passed that determined what areas of the state were groundwater over-appropriated, and the NP-NRD was one of those districts.
Late 1990s, I think it became more and more apparent that the water levels, the stream flow in Pumpkin Creek and the groundwater levels were declining, and that they were continuing to decline. So in 2001, the NRD established the Pumpkin Creek Basin Groundwater Management Area.
The integrated management plan was implemented, and the 2010s were dedicated to meeting the obligations set forth in the plan. Groundwater allocations, water augmentation projects, groundwater retirements, temporary surface water retirements were the common language of the decade. The North Platte NRD was able to complete one of the last projects for the Gearing Valley drainage in 2012, which was the Anson Drain.
Jumped feet first into a lot of really good projects. So
as we started the water allocation programs of 2009 irrigation season, those producers were allowed 18 inches of water to start that program off. We made drastic moves and changes as we learned more about managing groundwater in this district. We went then to a 3-year allocation, then followed with a 5-year allocation. We spent a lot of time trying to make things work and be flexible with our producers. We tried to also try to get water back to the river through augmentation projects. We did several groundwater retirements, both permanent and temporary. We did enter into a handful of surface water temporary retirements to try to meet our IMP obligations and returning that amount of water back to the North Platte River. I would like to hope that our efforts would be appreciated into the future. I would certainly hope that the folks that come after us would look back and say, hey, I think they did a good job, and would appreciate the sacrifice our producers put into place to make our groundwater programs a success.
The NRDs have 12 statutory responsibilities from erosion prevention and control to forestry and range management. The NRD has built many partnerships with other agencies, both federal and state, and continue to work closely with their sister agency, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. The Natural Resources Districts have seen many accomplishments as well as challenges over the last 50 years, and as we look into the future at the next 50 years to come, the North Platte Natural Resources District hopes to continue on the path of conserving natural resources by keeping the statutory responsibilities top of mind.
I think it will become a continuing challenge to provide clean water in sufficient amount to provide for municipal needs as well as agricultural needs and recreational needs. That we will continue to find ways to manage and push the state to provide for all uses within the state.
Well, I think in the future we're going to help people with their nutrient management. I think that's a big issue, so that we can keep the groundwater clean. Conserving groundwater, we're going to have to do more and more of that as time goes on.
The accomplishments made and the ones yet to come are not only because of the staff at the North Platte NRD, but also because of the great producers in the North Platte District who were open-minded and wanted to be a part of changing history and conserving the natural resources for future generations.
If there's any applause to be given, it's to those producers that were not closed-minded and were open-minded and into thinking like, yeah, we need to be doing something to better our situation as regarding resources so that the future generations can continue to farm here.
The North Platte NRD is committed to working with the producers in the district and facing the challenges together.
The NRD became much more of an education and information tool. It's a unique opportunity to not just legislate and make rules and enforce them, but to explain and show with data and scientific information how this all can work together, to make the bottom line better.
Past and present staff at the North Platte NRD take great pride in serving the constituents of the district, and conserving natural resources is always top of mind. The Nebraska Associations of Resource Districts have had a tremendous past 50 years and hope to continue on with the tradition of protecting, managing, and preserving our natural resources well into the next 50 years.